Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Ready the Guy Training. I posted onto the main Facebook page as well as the alumni only page, and I was just kind of like, "Hey, I'm doing a Q&A, freaking, list of stuff that you've got to list, with the intent to answer all of those questions. There's a lot of them, so I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. I didn't release that I was going to go and do it on YouTube because, to be honest, I wanted to answer all the questions, serious or not. And if I released it on YouTube also, it would just be too much. So we're going to go ahead and get into all of that stuff right now. Okay, so I'm going to preface all of this really quick by saying if I summarized your question, it was just because I was writing all of them down, and I wanted to get to them all. So I'm only going to put out first names. Some guys get kind of wonky about first and last names, that kind of thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and come out with that. Or names that I know you by, that kind of thing. The first one's actually pretty good. Chavez asks, when will your Black Ops mission record be declassified? I'll tell you what, it's already declassified. What you do is you go into Microsoft.com, right? And you do a search for a tag. It's called inadvertent poop, okay? Capital letter on the I and capital letter on the P's. And then you'll be able to look up my Black Ops mission record, from start to finish there. Pretty easy to check out, that kind of thing. Ridiculous. Jeremy asks, can you give us a timetable on when you're going to take your company to the next level with your own property, and are you considering investors? Yes, because, well, I've already got a couple of investors. We're thinking about building a couple of sites. I wanted to do one. I wanted to put up a range in Tennessee, but the further on we went with getting ready to do Tennessee type stuff, the more that we were pushed into the shade. Does that make sense? So it was one of those things where it's like, well, fuck it. But there's another site that actually is going up rather soon. It's in Winnemucca, Nevada. And either by the time this video posts or very shortly thereafter, I'm actually posting classes there. As far as construction and all that stuff is concerned, there will be stuff that's done, and all of that. Stands sort of tight-lipped about it, and I have been for a while. I've just been telling people, hey, the X and Y is gonna happen. But I will say, for sure, classes are getting ready to go up in Winnemucca, Nevada. And I'm probably going to place it a few months out so that our California boyos and our Oregon guys and all those people have some time to plan, because I'm probably going to do a lot of them back to back to kind of make it worth it, because I'm on the East Coast, and obviously this is way out west. So I have to make it worth it for me to go out there. So there's probably going to be a bunch of classes stacked back to back so that it's worthy of my time being out there as far as monetarily and all that stuff, because I got to make money too in order to keep doing this. More of these questions. Dave, when did you discover you were gay, and did it spice up your marriage? I discovered I was gay when I came into the Army. I mean, just the first time that we were in the showers, just the 55 dicks in there, it was absolutely one of those things that makes you wide-eyed and it gets you exposed to the world. And no, it doesn't spice up the marriage at all. She just thinks I'm weird. Now, Zach has like a lot of questions, but they're all really good questions, so I'm just going to go all the way through Zach's thing. Why do you train? I train not just because it's one of those things that a lot of people like to do. Like, some guys are like real huge gym guys. Like, I go to the gym, but I hate every second of it. I train not just because it's one of those things that is a fulfilling feeling to me. It's also one of those things that has real world implications, right? Like, I carry a gun every day, and the absolute last thing I want to be is the guy that's not prepared for pick a thing, right? The last thing that I want to be is the person that goes to skin out a pistol and starts fumble fucking around with it and that kind of stuff. And that's even happened a couple of times since I made a right-handed only switch, and there's questions that pertain to that. But I fumble fucked around on a draw with a right hand and that kind of stuff. I want to be that person to where if something happens, because crazy as fuck finds quiet and out of the way places, like how many shootings have we heard of where after it happens, dude is all like, people are sitting there like, oh, well, that never happens here and blah, blah, blah. I don't want to be a victim of, well, that never happens here, you know. So it's one of those deals where I train. At first it was because of survivability and stuff for deployments. Now it's anything and everything that gets in between me and mine is getting bulldozed the fuck down. And that's where my mind is on that. And it's not just the gun guy stuff, it's fighting gyms and that kind of shit too. So there's that. Why do I teach? It's another question from him. That one's really simple. I really, really love doing it. I like getting people exposed to things that they don't know that they don't know. I like subjecting people to my errors and my previous experience in fucking shit up. I love watching the quote unquote light bulbs come on. And I absolutely love the fact that when you get in there and you start teaching blocks and then you start coaching people through it, I love seeing people develop. It's one of those things to where I've told a lot of people before, my objective is to make you better than me, but I will never let you have it, right? Like, you have to train through what I've got currently and be better than that either way. And some guys have done that, you know, to where it's like they started out at X to where, you know, they came out and shot at static ranges and that kind of stuff. And there are guys that have blown past me because they're able to train harder, or they're able to train more, or they pick up things faster. I'm not somebody that learns something like that. I'm a 10,000 reps person. So someone's acceleration through where I currently stand, which isn't very fucking high, okay, but someone's acceleration through where I stand and knowing that they come through our program and train with us a lot is one of those things that's very gratifying. You know, I like sharing what I know with people, and it's a passion that I have that has just kind of carried over. Like I love doing that in high school. Okay, I love doing it now. So it's always something that I've really enjoyed more than anything else. But then there's greater consequences to that as well, and I'm aware of those consequences, and I take it seriously. So I teach to make people better. And as corny as that sounds, brass tacks, that's what I love doing. I love making people better than they were. So there you go. What makes a good instructor in your opinion? An adaptable one, and someone that is willing to internally check, right? Just so for instance, I do not like instructors that flaunt their backgrounds, that use that as an appeal to authority. I like instructors that are just kind of like, hey, well, I've been involved in X and Y and Z. Doesn't matter though. Can I do X and Y? I love guys that will show you that they're capable of what they're trying to get you to do. I love instructors that are adaptable. Like, for instance, I've been in classes before where the only approach that this guy knew was a very motherly type approach, where he'd come up to guys and be like, oh, well, you know, good job, and blah, blah, blah. And I personally can't stand the pom-pom shit, right? When you're teaching me, especially if it's a new concept, you may have to physically move body parts places to where you want them. And when I'm in the middle of stuff, you have to teach me with a stick, you know, just constantly like beating the shit out of me and getting and ironing out what you need from me. And I need guys that can basically switch between the two, you know. That to me is a mark of a good and flexible instructor. I don't like absolute behavior either. Guys that are like, this is the only thing that has ever worked ever. And people that treat this kind of stuff like it's a martial art, there's no way that one way is the way. It's not possible, because if you can invent a scenario that could happen, right, reasonably, of course, then you have to be able to change things up on the fly. You have to be adept for all kinds of things. I like guys that are just that would just approach the situation with, here's what we're going to do. Here's X, Y, and Z on how you get through it. And here's my preferred. I have no, negative things to say about guys that say, this is what I prefer because of X, Y, and Z, but here's the other stuff. So flexibility is more of what I look for in an instructor than anything else. And also instructors that will change things up based on what they see works and what doesn't. Like if I go to a school that hasn't changed anything in 6 months to a year or something like that, or, been to a school that has a specific doctrine that they always follow, I don't hang around there very long. I may hang around there to see what it is that they have to offer, but I don't hang around very long because it shows that you're inflexible. And it shows that you're unwilling to update what it is that you teach based on how the world evolves around you. Absolutist behavior is not my thing. What challenges you? Jesus Christ, all kinds of shit. What challenges me, honestly, is people willing to call things. Like, for instance, holy shit, this dude Adam. Right, I love this guy because he's so bluntly honest. It's not even funny. He showed up to a performance rifle class once, and I was talking about being able to do a snapshot where your eyeballs are barely over the top of your optics, and we're shooting irons right now, right? And I'm just kind of sitting there like, yeah, a solid reaction time that you want to work to is round about 0.35 seconds to a shot in the heart at round about 7 yards. And before I was even done with that, he was just kind of like, "Can you do that?" Fuck you, get on the timer, let's go. The first shot that comes up, and this is like cold. I hadn't fired a round yet in this class. Snap, pow, and it was like 0.34, and I was like, fuck that, run it again. Even though that's inside the standard, I was just like, fuck that, run it again. Dude hits the timer, snap up, pow, it was like a 0.29 or something, and then he just kind of, okay, cool. Students that are willing to challenge me and call me on my shit and being all like, you're having us do this, can you do it? Right? I love those guys because, number one, it's a check, and it's a good one. As a student, you have to be able to trust that what you're being taught can be done in the first place, which is why I have no respect at all for instructors that refuse to demo for their students. Yeah, it's a big thing too. So there's stuff like that, and then there's seeking challenges. Like, for instance, I've been a left-handed shooter for 21 years. I started shooting when I was 6 and been left-handed from there all the way up to now. A few months ago, I think 4 now. I made a complete switch over to right-handed all the way. I mean, holsters and everything, because I'm bad at it. Just finding things that I know that I'm not as well versed in. Finding challenges are things that I like to go for. And people willing to put me to task on shit that I say I can do, or just out the gate, when we're doing 100 round practice, like me and Josh or something like that, we take longer, more difficult shots, and the consequence to each individual miss is 5 push-ups, right? So you're already in the gym a bunch. It's one of those things where it's like, I kind of want to avoid that. It makes you focus and do that kind of thing. So I love shooting with people, especially guys of similar skill level that are just kind of like, let's do something hard on purpose, so. Like a trigger finger isolation drill at 50 yards with your dumb hand side. You have 1 round to make the hit. Consequences like bear crawling or some shit. So there are a lot of different things that challenge me. And, especially people that I talk to about curriculum that have helped me develop this in the past. Yes men kind of sort of piss me off. I like people that are just kind of like, I'm not so sure about this, because again, it checks you on your bullshit. Like my buddy Evan, who helped me develop a lot of this curriculum, even in the middle of teaching, right? Because he's helped me teach a bunch of classes in the past and that kind of thing. I would teach a block and be like, this is how I like doing it. And then he steps up and he's all like, I don't like any of that because of X, Y, and Z. So yes men kind of challenge me as well, and I'm into that kind of shit. What advice would you give someone who wants to do what you do? Stay focused. Stay focused. You started a company for teaching people, and that's what you like to do. That's what you want to do. Recognize that you're going to be doing that about 1% of the time, right? Everything else involved with running a company, all the ins and outs, all the late night emails, all of the stupid time frames that you basically show to a lot of people that you're like an owl, okay? Where you're up all hours of the night answering questions and all kinds of shit and figuring out venues and going to places and properly pricing things and promoting yourself and that kind of shit. A lot of time, I felt it a lot as well, where it just kind of deflates you a lot, and you're just kind of sitting there like, shit, I wanted to do this, but I barely do it. If you want to do it, if you want to get into this kind of thing, and after a while you start figuring out like a good equilibrium on balancing that with the family and all that other stuff, stay focused on what you're trying to do. Don't get thrown off into the winds by passion projects and that kind of stuff. I've had people pull me away from passion projects because I have more important shit to do. Okay. And most of that just kind of boils down to being focused. So if you stay focused, you'll be fine. Also, every fucking body is going to doubt you. There's always going to be like naysayers. There's always going to be all kinds of people that doubt you. There's going to be all kinds of people that tell you, well, you can't do X and Y and blah, blah, blah. Generally speaking, those people don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They will distract you from what it is that you're trying to do. They'll bring a lot of negative influence on whether or not you can do X and Y. And I'm not saying ignore everyone you've ever cared about in your life when you're trying to do this. But if you want to make it happen, you have to understand that you have to make it happen. Okay? No one else is going to do it. No one's going to do shit for you. You have to do it. And that requires a lot of extra work. It requires a lot of reading. It requires a lot of paying attention to what in the fuck needs to happen. And then acting on it. Keeping yourself from getting lazy is very important. So, stay focused is the biggest thing I have to say on that. Who has been a mentor to you? A lot of people. There are a lot of guys in units I've been in the past that have demanded a lot out of me. My mom was a huge mentor to me because she was one of those people that very much expected the best out of you as the norm, right? And it's one of those things where it's like, I've told this story before where, when in high school, I was part of JROTC and football and shit like that. So I was doing a lot at once. But, there was this big drill competition and that kind of shit. And it sounds really like really big deal now. But when you're a high school kid and you don't have any other obligations, it's the most important thing ever. And, been busting my ass, making sure that all the ducks were in a row, practicing form, practicing a lot of things that you had to memorize and that kind of shit. And we went to this big competition, won it, came back, was really happy, had this big fucking trophy, and I was all excited for it and that kind of thing. And I tell my mom about this, who I'm expecting to be really excited for the fact that I won, and be like, oh yeah, whatever, And she was cooking, I remember, and she was just kind of like, oh, okay, cool. I was so goddamn offended, right? Because I dumped so much effort into this. And it was one of the few times that, you voice that frustration, and you don't do that. You don't do that with a Vietnamese mom, okay? They're fucking dragons. But I voiced this opinion, and she looks at me like I'm fucking ridiculous right now, because looking back on it, I was. And she's just kind of like, why would I think that this would be anything but normal from you? I don't expect you to fail. So when you show up with a first prize something, or if you win at anything, I just expect that to be the norm. And it's disappointing. It's really disappointing to know that my expectations are higher than yours for you. And it's one of those deals where you just kind of sit there like, oh, I'm a punk. She was a big influence, because I noticed that a lot of things in my life, and it isn't me trying to sound like a particular way, but I noticed that a lot of things in my life that are kind of far-reaching. They're like big goals for lots of people and that kind of thing. And I'm not downing achievements from lots of people, but at the same time, it's one of those deals where at the end of the day, when it finally happens and when it's established and all that shit, it just feels like it should have happened. You know, when you finally get there and it's established, like starting this company, for instance, and then starting that first class, you know, this just feels normal, you know. And when you get away from it, you're just kind of like, oh, we did a thing. That's kind of cool. But as you're going through that, it just feels like it should be happening. And I believe that is a huge influence on me as far as what I was able to do and that kind of thing. And then you have military NCOs and that kind of stuff that help develop you and humble you, because, you know, I was one of those really enthusiastic and stupid types that needed reining in. You know, also, like, going into the Army, you see a lot of different people with a lot of different attitudes, and you figure yourself better than them, right? Because you have a particular attitude with coming into it. And those NCOs really humble you, and they make you understand you're better than nobody, and that you have to understand where lots of people are coming from. Now, granted, there are a lot of shitbags in the Army. There really are. Just like any other profession ever. There are lots of shitbags. But there are also some very successful people that just approach life different than you, and you have to be able to understand that. You have to be able to grow up. You have to be able to empathize with people better and that kind of thing. As far as like firearms training and that kind of stuff, I mean, pick a guy. You know, the school as it stands right now and how adaptable that it is, and a lot of the techniques and that kind of stuff are all based on really good trainers that are out there. You know, quick to the gun, sure of your grip. Quick to the target, sure of your shot, is a Chris Costa thing. You know, and that's always been like a subconscious thing in my head. You don't have a good zero unless you don't have. If you don't have a good zero, you don't have shit. That's a Travis Haley thing, and that stuck with me as far as just making sure that your zeros are good to go, like really base level type stuff. You know, Andy with the Tactical Firearms Academy. You know, there are no excuses for nothing. You know, how you do it is how you do it until you can't. And if you can't, now is when I step in and that's when we have to start changing things. You know, a lot of things that I've learned and that I've pushed forward from that, you know, just kind of carried into what I know now and what I teach has come from all of these other trainers, from all of these different places that know some shit, that have been through things in their lives, and then you take pieces of that and you apply it to your own thing, you know. So, you know, it's not like an individual mentor type thing, but it's a lot of people that you've listened to, that you pay a lot of attention to, and that you're basically enough of an adult to comprehend what it is that they're trying to tell you and then apply it to your life. So there's that. Eli asks, what were you wrong about that you changed because of a student, or more so a class, or more so a student? I tell you what, the way that I used to teach things, I was very Army about, to a point. Not in like Army processing, like the Army way, but how they framed things, right? Like, the way we used to have it is we used to run a particular station and then, or a block followed by a block followed by a block, and each one of those blocks would have a certain round count on it, and we had to stay on that round count. And I was very much about the structure of that, right? And it's not just a flow thing, but it's also from the students themselves, basically showing us that people take in information differently, and you can get a vibe from a class based on how they're receiving certain information. And what that has led to, really, is that it's led to a series of audibles, right? And what that did is that it changed up everything. Like, our individual process, the difference between our beta testing classes and now, is how we've run things for a while now. Like, since the company went official and since we put it on a website and all that stuff, we don't roll things out via a structured step-by-step curriculum, because people take in information different. What we have now is, here's all the shit that we got to teach, right? here's a set number of magazines that they can go through, so that, you know, we're not chewing through too much ammo for one drill. And we'll rotate what goes in first, what goes in next, and what goes in after that, based on what we see out of the class, how they're absorbing information, how well they're doing the previous drills, that kind of thing. And what it's really taught more than anything else, and this is from, you know, individual students and from classes, is that you cannot teach formulaically. Like, you can't have a step by step thing, because how people absorb information is going to alter how you teach it, right? So, I mean, we could start from the beginning and just talking to people. You know, we can start with, you know, the draw stroke. I've led off classes with talking about fundamentals first, right? And then after that, we talk about a cleaner draw stroke, rather than what a lot of guys knew. And this is based on their previous experiences, because they give you that in our student introduction, right? Because we ask for a name, your job, previous training experience, and all that in a little student intro. And when we see a lot of guys that have done a lot of self-training, a lot of guys that have done previous classes and that kind of stuff, I know that they're not going to be too terribly hung up on the fundamentals for the most part, right? So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we can start from a draw stroke, right? And then we see them doing some shooting and that kind of thing, and then we reinforce those fundamentals later, and we talk about exactly what is a fundamental, what's a technique, and that kind of thing, and we just kind of staple that in, right? But those will rotate, and this is like the first two couple of concepts that we cover in class, right? Never mind talking about hard target focus, when do we put in position work, when do we put in stoppages, when do we put in movement, when do we put in work and cover, like all of these things that we are gonna get through is altered on a regular basis based on how the class is absorbing that information. And that's probably the biggest thing that that I was wrong about in the past, that that classes and students have made me change up, because teaching formulaically is very, very rigid, and it's very doctrine-like, you know, and it's not going to work all the time. So the best way to adapt to what we've got as far as students is that. Chavez, what are the best takeaways you've gotten from classes you've attended? The best takeaway I've ever gotten, and it was from the very first class that I ever took, it was, you ain't ready, dude. It's one of those things where I shot expert in the Army, and I was very confident with myself, very enthusiastic, and very arrogant. And I take my first class, and I don't know shit. Like, I'm getting stomped by these people on a regular basis, and it's awesome when we get soldiers that come into our Rifle 1 class and are taught the same thing in the opening moments. You know, like before lunch, you see it in their faces, like, oh shit, this is way more than I thought I was getting into. You know, that's the biggest takeaway, is that you ain't ready. Fix your bullshit, you know, and that was probably the biggest takeaway I've ever gotten from a class, was that you don't know a lot. Learn more, right? And again, this is years ago, but that I will never, ever, ever forget going into that. And this is just like, you know, a Rifle 1-esque class. That isn't, here's how you load a rifle, here's how you zero rifle. And I was just not prepared. And figuring that out was very humbling for me. Tyler asks, if there was one thing you wanted to stick out to your students in any class, what would it be? That right there. And the other one is kind of an add-on to this as well, is that you're never done. You're never done, because the second that you think that you're done, somebody someplace is surpassing you and is also a terrible human being and a criminal. Right. The minute that you think that you're done is the minute that you're awful. Because this kind of thing, like fighting mindset in general, and techniques, and shit that you currently know and that you're sharp at, the minute that you hang it up and figure that you're good for a little while, before you know it, you're trash. So you're never, ever, ever done. Ever. Cody, will there be more training-based videos as far as concealed carry? And he lists a variety of things. To a point, but a lot of the stuff, Cody, that you asked for, it's easier to just explain in a class, to be honest with you. And this isn't me trying to like hide the playbook or any of that kind of stuff. It's just in order for me to explain everything that you asked for in your questions adequately, I need a classroom setting, and then we need to work on it individually. Like I need to be able to coach you and that kind of stuff. But as far as training-based videos, as far as beforehand classes, as far as little help-out techniques here and there, absolutely, yeah. A lot of those are coming. Particularly dry fire stuff. Because dry fire can help out a lot on a lot of things as far as just like body mechanics, as far as proper lineup of sighting systems, that kind of thing. Figuring out what's going on with your body as you get into certain positions. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. So yeah, more training videos are coming. A lot of guys also asked a similar question and figure that it would be more beneficial to the company if I had little advertisements of little clips here and there from classes. And I agree with them. I do. The only reason why you don't see more like little clips and videos of that kind of stuff is that like I'll show up thinking to myself, okay, we need to get a bunch of clips from class and blah, blah, blah. The second that we start class, though, I'm focused on them, and that idea goes away, and I start talking to people about things, and it's the only reason why it hasn't happened is just focus on what's happening in class versus the cameras and shit. You see what I mean? What else? Alex, if you only have 200 rounds, rifle, pistol, whatever, he basically asks, like, what would you do to very effectively train with those 200 rounds. I am going to probably do a video or two on that because it is a frame of mind thing, and there isn't like an all-encompassing 200 round thing or 100 round thing. Generally speaking, when it's like that, I'll pick a thing to work on and beat the shit out of that thing for that 100 or 200 rounds, and I typically try to make it more difficult as time goes. But the best way to explain that is for like me and Josh or something like that to do a video on it, so you'll see it. What else? Various people ask me about the ACSS reticle and my thoughts on that and various optics and that kind of thing. The ACSS reticle is awesome. It has plenty of accuracy fag stuff in there, and I'm absolutely one of those people. As far as ballistic drop compensator and lead indicators and ranging methodologies and that kind of stuff, particularly with the 1.5 power baby ACOG that I bought. So I'm going to be doing a review on that. Yeah, I love it. It works really good. It isn't busy. And in a pinch and or up close, you can rock it real hard and real well. So yeah, I love it. If it's in a red dot or a piece of glass that works, absolutely I would use it. Here's the thing, that reticle tends to be pretty small, especially on like magnified or red dots and that kind of stuff. Some guys are not going to like it because of vision issues and that kind of thing. And to me, I don't even really see the chevron on it for the most part on, for instance, like the baby cog, until I try to zero it or shoot at something small at like 200 yards or whatever the fuck, right? Or I'm trying to get a baseline zero at 50, and that's the only time I can see that friggin' chevron, okay? Which is good to me, honestly, because if I'm trying to shoot stuff up close, it's all of that accuracy stuff, the BDC, all that, it goes away. For the most part, to me, I'm just like, boop, inside the donut of death and do what you gotta do. So I love the reticle, I really do. And pick a thing that it goes in. I like it. What else? A different Zach this time. Vehicle class, ? Basically. Because he leads into, hey, you're going to Costaluda's vehicle class. I'm doing that in January in Florida. And he was just kind of like, post that, is there going to be a vehicle type class and blah, blah, blah. Dude, of course there's not. Especially not right after. And here's the reason, being real here. I have a lot of time around vehicles that are not civilian vehicles, right? Like MAT-Vs, RG-31s, Humvees, armored vehicles of some kind. You know, I've worked in and out of and move all around these vehicles for a long time. That's not a Corolla, though. You know, before I put on some kind of vehicle class or something like that, I have to be very, very well versed in that, to where I have a certain level of mastery among all things that revolve around that, and different technique types, before I even think about that kind of shit. So no, not for now. No. Chris asks, Frozen or Tangled? Tangled's just a better movie to me, and that damn theme song, while catchy, is ridiculous. So, no. Tangled all day. Phil asks, what is your quest? This is actually a deeper question than it seems. It was the very first question that was put up on the Facebook page, like the mainline one. Honestly, brass tacks, my quest is to share knowledge. That's all it is. It's nothing crazy. It's nothing super duper epic or any of that stuff. I found a thing that I really like doing. I want to make it to where I do that thing for a living, and that thing is sharing knowledge. I love doing it, and I'm just going to keep on with it. You know, for as long as I can, I'm going to ride this boat. William, where do you see yourself or your company in 10 years? Well, I see myself operating a company that is beginning to travel a little bit less, because we're focusing on stuff that's going down off of our own company that's really close to the house. On top of that, the website that's up for like hats and that kind of stuff, I want that to evolve into not just like clothing and that kind of shit, but I also want to be able to sell everything I've ever recommended on the YouTube channel, and only that, right? So what I see in my head is an internet store that dudes can get stuff that they know is going to work. I see guys coming out to a range that we built that can support all kinds of crazy shit that we want to do. And similar to the SIG Academy, for instance, I see them being able to just walk into the physical location, walk into a pro shop, as it were, and get the things that I've recommended before, right? Because the ultimate here is, I want to be able to share knowledge. I want to be able to provide equipment that I know is going to work. I want to be able to help guys in any capacity that I can. And where I'm going to focus on this more than anything else is the civilian populace. I don't plan on taking military contract or police contract training ever. I don't believe in that kind of stuff as far as a civilian company is concerned. And I'm also way about the civilian populace just being better at this shit than military and police. So that's where I see myself in my company. I see us as well established. I see us as, you know, people can refer to and be like, oh, regular guy training. Oh, okay, that's kind of cool. You know, blah, blah, blah. You know, like one of those names that people attach to, and to things that is not like Voda and shit, you know. I want us to be those people that, you know, regardless, you can't go wrong at all with coming to us and training, because, and being perfectly honest, I don't think you can, because, you know, there's more questions about that kind of stuff, but it's not like, first of all, gunfighting is not fucking rocket science. It's not very hard. It's really not. There's a lot of things that you can get into, and there's a lot of things that you have to be able to master and focus on and that kind of shit. But as far as the concepts, teaching it and that kind of shit, there's no like ancient fucking Chinese secret. You know, it's not very hard. Like, from the number of schools that I've been to, both military and civilian, the number of places that I've been to, everybody's trying to essentially do the same thing, and it's just how exactly they're doing it, you know, that's different. So where I see us in 10 years is very successful. It's very successful, pretty well known, but not one of those people that goes to SHOT Show. I pretty much refuse to go to the dumbassery that is SHOT Show, in my opinion. And there's a lot of things that I have against that, as far as just their lack of innovation and that kind of stuff. And they're catering to folks that would not benefit, a dude with a 9-to-5 job, like, ever. So it's whatever on that note. So there it is. So nothing complex. Chris asks, has your son shot yet? No, 6 years old. 6 years old. That's where we're going to be on that. He's 8 months old, but whatever. I'm going to wait until he's 6. That's where there's still sponges for material and that kind of stuff. That's when he's able to hang on to a 22 and that kind of shit. That's when I can teach him stuff properly, and he absorb it, and he absorb it very well. And at that stage, it's ingrained forever. I was taught at 6. A lot of friends of mine were taught at 6. Some a little bit sooner, but I believe the good place is the good place to start at 6 years old. So kind of can't wait for that day. Brett asks, have you run the SAM7 in a class? Do you still like it as much as you did when you shot your review on it? And are you coming to Florida? Please. I've run the SAM7 through a lot of my own curriculum, just so that, AK reps are up and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I still love it. It's a fantastic rifle. It's one of the best AKs I've ever used, and as far as a complete rifle that you can get in the States to start right now, I think it's the best. Russian and Chinese guns, absolutely. They're great. They really are, and there's a lot of them floating about. But as far as a gun that you can get domestically with no issues at all, I think it's the best. Patrick asks, if you could design a handgun, what features would it have, and what caliber would it be? I think I would design 2. What I would design, to me, is a lower bore axis gun, similar to a CZ type pistol. What I would like is its original grip profile to be that of a 1911's, and a backstrap that you can add that basically gives it the same curvature as a Glock. I would have it take Glock magazines. I would have the slide stop levers be small. Okay. Whether or not it fits into its own holster or other holsters is irrelevant. I would have it be chambered in 9mm to start. And as far as a striker fired gun is concerned, I would make sure that it has a similar trigger to that of a VP9's, which is drop safe and really good. Also, I would take a page from the 80s, right? And like older M9s, right? They used to have the dash dot type sighting system where the rear sight just had, a vertical tick on it, and the front sight was a standard dot fitting inside a set of regular notch and post sights. That's where I would be on the stock sights for that thing. And if there were stock sights that came with it, that were also night sights, amber rear, green fronts. Okay. And 1913 sections on the dust cover. Ambi controls, that kind of stuff. Very boring. No fluff, no craziness, none of that shit as far as a striker fired pistol. But I would also do the same thing. But I would also have a single action only gun too, like a 1911's, because a lot of people really, really like that 1911 trigger, myself included. And what I would basically do is, it's one of those things where, you keep the grip angle the same as a 1911's. You give people the ability to add a backstrap that adds the same grip angle as a Glock in there. You allow it to take regular Glock style magazines, and within this frame you have a mainspring housing and a single action trigger with a 1911 trigger bow in there. Okay, with a modified Browning action type slide up top, so that you don't have 1911 reliability issues and that kind of shit. Except for, if you got stuff into the trigger components into lower, you could run it, because that's just how the 1911 trigger is. You could run into reliability issues, but it's still a modern pistol with a 1911 trigger in it and double stack mags that isn't going to cost you $10 billion. That's my ultimate as far as a pistol is concerned. But guys that don't like hammer-fired pistols, you can do the same thing with a striker. So that would be the pistol that I would design, and I think that it would sell like fucking crazy. You know. Oh, and of course, what you do too is that you design your slide to where it has a plate in it that you can remove, and it's only cut for RMRs. So guys that want to get it are going to get serious about it, right? It only has a plate for RMRs, and you set that RMR just low enough to where you can use a standard set of sights versus a set of suppressor height sights. And for guys that don't think that that's going to work, Brownells is already doing that. So, how now, Brown Cow? That's where I would be if I were to design a pistol. You know, is that on the drawing board? Fuck no. But if we were to get to that point, I would probably, you know, design a pistol that I would want to shoot, and that out the gate, the second I drew the thing, I could stick a line on it, jam it in a holster, use one of the best pistol magazines that's ever been designed. Okay? And of course, you sell your own. And if you sell your own, you sell metal magazine bodies because they drop a little bit better than Glock magazines. But if you are super invested in Glock, and a lot of people are, you can still take standard Glock magazines, no problem. And all that really takes is, you know, cuts. Magazine cuts. Done. So, moving on. Oh, and by the way, a lot of guys that don't think that you can do a standard 1911 style grip with Glock magazines, you absolutely can. Okay, because all these grip reduction jobs that we see on the polymer and that kind of stuff makes that flattened angle, right? 1911 grip angles, for the most part, just in here, are real similar. It's this bastard right here that's different. You know, that's all it is. You know, it's got a Browning high power hump in there. Simple. So there's that. Oh, what Octavio asks, what are some things that you used to believe in, and what changed your mind? Oh, Lord. A bunch of shit. The whole draw and sidestep thing, where in the middle of the draw you do a sidestep and you do the sidestep and that kind of thing. That kind of stuff right there, I used to be a huge believer in. It's like, yeah, man, if you're moving, it's harder for people to hit you. It fucks with OODA loop and all that stuff, right? And then Dave Spalding shut that shit down like immediately. Because he's like, dude, the figure eight while you're reloading, it sounds great if guys like us, you know, people that are mindful of where their bullets are going, are trying to hit you. Bad guy in the street ain't going to do that. They think different than you. While you're sitting there moving and doing your little figure eight or whatever, they're just going to fill that entire space with bullets. How does a sidestep help? Right? Or the next thing is the sidestep on the draw. Right? Number one, you are going to be slower. If not by a lot, it's going to happen. You're going to be slower. And number two, that works out really well, and it fucks with OODA loop on people that are not trained very well. And a lot of times when you see force on force, and a lot of force on force schools that advocate this kind of stuff, you notice that there's a mix of guys playing Op 4, right? And the Op 4 are guys that act like us, right? Dudes that are concerned about whether or not bullets are going into somebody else. They're already, like Dave Spalding says, fucking, you know, they're already committing a gigantic felony, and at this point they're just trying to stay alive. They don't really care if somebody else gets nicked or killed, right? Because they're already going down if they go down. And in addition to that, it's one of those things where it's like properly trained eyes will just track that movement, right? And the criminal element is just far more experienced, by and large. It's far more experienced, been in far more gunfights and all that shit than you ever thought of, right? For the most part, we're talking like just a guy with a 9 to 5, like, okay. So that's a big thing that kind of changed my perception on that, because it made complete sense until you start, and he's not the only person that explains it from the bad guy point of view. And that is, I'm be dirty with this shit, right? So it shook up a lot of what I thought about that, because now that whole get off the X theology is back to its original roots, and that is where you're standing right now is the bad place to be. Get off the X and get to someplace else could mean a sidestep behind a concrete pillar. It could also mean 200 feet to the other side of the shoulder of the road, or straight up getting the fuck up out of there. It doesn't mean do the dance, take a shot. If it requires you drawing a gun and taking a shot right then and there, you might as well be as fast as possible, getting that gun out and getting the supersonic beams into people. And a lot of that was influenced by cops on the street that deal with this shit on a day-to-day. So that's where that was. That's where that impacted me a lot. And this is like years ago now, but it changed my mind on that real fast. Another one was gross motor skills versus fine motor skills. And Travis destroyed this because I used to be, charging handle only, that kind of person, right? And he asked me, why are you doing that on an AR? And I'm sitting there like, oh, gross motor skills, fine motor skills, blah, blah, blah. And he just looked at me and cocked his head like I'm a fucking retard. And I was just kind of like, what? And he's just kind of like, I have a question. Is pressing a trigger, according to what you just said, a fine motor skill? What about pressing a magazine button? What about not so much with your digits, but your eyeballs? What about lining up this with that, putting it on that over there, and then taking a shot? Mentally, is that a fine motor skill? I was like, yeah, it's bullshit. I was like, oh, fuck. So that changed my mind on that real fast. And ever since, I've been pressing... and he added this too. He was just kind of like, how many bent charging handles have you seen? Maybe not yourself, but other people doing that. And I was like, a few? Oh, shit. He's like, yeah, it's not your friend. Okay, man. And it changed my mind, and it humbled my perspective on that really fast. And since then, I've been pressing bolt locks and slide lock levers and that kind of shit, because when it's brought into perspective like that, and he was just kind of like, yeah, and the principal thing is that during a gunfight, you might miss that switch. You think you might miss a charging handle? How many times have you rolled your knuckles on a charging handle or some shit like that? And I was just kind of like, fuck, I have done that. Or just shit like that. And just this one discussion right here flatlined all of that talk. And since then, I've been doing better things. Because, dropping bolt locks and that kind of stuff, even if you miss it or roll it a little bit and then end up pressing it anyway, it's still faster than doing this. Also, you can absolutely break the shit out of a charging handle on an AR doing that. Also, that charging handle only stuff, come to find out, because I actually tried this later on, you can't do that with all guns. Try doing that on a G3 with a loaded 20-round magazine. It ain't happening. So again, it changed up absolutist behavior for me and that kind of shit, which is great. So there you go. Also, training and how hard and how often you train, it dictates whether or not you fumble fuck stuff with your hands. And this is just stuff that I learned over time. Mitch asks, how does one go about taking classes while in the Army? When you first get in the Army, dude, leave. That's about the only way you're doing it. After you've been through some schools and that kind of stuff, I actually found out something kind of cool about a sniper that's in 101st out of Campbell. He's a Rakkasan. His way of doing it, he started by taking leave days, but his way of doing it is convincing his unit that this would benefit the unit as a whole to come out and seek this kind of knowledge, right? And they're sitting there like, oh, what if it's bullshit and blah blah blah. And his way of speaking Army retardese was just kind of like, even if it's bad, I know what to tell guys not to do. So they cleared him to go do it. How cool your command is based on that, I don't know. I guess it would have to be, something in that realm of whether or not, your commander and first sergeant are cool with that kind of shit. But that's how he'd been doing it. And he's been out to a bunch of our classes now. So, there you go. He just ends up pulling like a late as shit shift the day before, and then, you know, kind of gets fucked the rest of the work week after that. But if you want to know how to do it, there you go. What else? Phil asks, was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? I think it was over when the Germans declared war, and I think it was over when the Germans decided they... So, there you go. The Japs didn't help, but, you know, whatever. Could have been totally different. They never stood a chance of winning the war in the first place, but whatever. Nathan asks, is 308 still a good battle rifle cartridge? In Afghanistan, absolutely. Other than that, I personally believe that it's a good medium machine gun cartridge, because it breaks the shit out of shit, and it'll fly far, which is what you need, like, you know, light crew serve weapons to do. As far as individual carbines and that kind of stuff, aside of Afghanistan, where the average engagement distance is much farther than where it has been historically, which is at an inside of 50 yards. No, I do not believe it to be superior to 5.56. It's heavier. It keeps you off target longer. You can't carry as much of that garbage reasonably. I say garbage, but you can't carry as much of that stuff reasonably. And it flashes horrendously in the dark, even with like birdcage flash suppressors and that kind of stuff. So, and AR-10s are terrible, generally speaking, unless you're looking at like an OBR and its only job is fixed position shooting and that kind of shit. So, you know, aside of a SCAR 17, not really. There you go. Kevin, thoughts on stock Wassers? They work and they work well. You know, it ain't a high-end rifle by any means, but it'll work and it'll work well. It'll serve you pretty good. The Romies, this is a Romanian-only gun. It's not a Century workover. I mean, the imported 100% Romanian guns, provided everything is straight, right? They just run and run and run and run and run forever. And it's hard to kill those things. Oh, and in the finish from legit Romies, or Romanian guns, don't give a fuck about nothing. So, I like them. Brian, is Taurus good for the money? Fuck no! Anthony asks, new Mac 90, muzzle device options? Until you get that thing threaded, you have none. But after you get it threaded, PWS FSC 47. Straight to the rear recoil impulse. It handles flash pretty good, and it flattens out the muzzle a little bit. It's awesome. It runs really good. So there you go. Phil asks, XD, XDM, XDE, or XDS? Fuck no! First of all, a grip safety that locks up the gun if it's not depressed. It's kind of fucked, because when you start doing one-handed stuff, that really messes with you. But the Achilles heel are those magazines. They're utter trash. Absolute trash. And I've seen them break in a gigantic variety of different ways. In classes, just no. In general, no. I'm good. Because I don't take issue with a grip safety. Because I'm a 1911 person. I take issue with a grip safety that fucks with your action if it's not depressed. Fair enough? Fair enough. Houston asks, how big? As an adult, bigger than I thought, smaller than you'd think. Sean asks, best rifle plates for a civilian? The level 4 kind. And if you have to use them, fuck, that sucks. Cry JPC. Will change your life. Micah asks, what foreign language should I learn? It really depends on locale. If you live in South Florida, you better learn Spanish. And the different variants of. You know, if you live in Germany, probably Syrian. So, you know, whatever. Luke asks, like, best type of shit at the fan ammo for storage and that kind of stuff. For 223, 7.62 by 39, 9mm. 223, XM193, all motherfucking day. Cool, dry place. 7.62 by 39, M67 ball. Because the containers that they come in are fantastic. And you can store them anywhere. 9mm, HSTs. they're plentiful and they're easy to get, and you can stockpile them a lot. But don't get crazy with this prepper shit. I have a whole thing to say about that kind of stuff. So there's that. Running low on battery. Keep moving. John asks, PSA AKs, or Palmetto State Armory. Have you tried them? Have you seen any in class? I've seen one. No, I haven't tried them, and I don't really have any thoughts on them because that's not enough data. Off of stuff I've seen. If I shot that gun for a class and then looked at it afterwards and then put a bunch more through it, okay, then we might be able to have something to say about it, but not enough data for me to really care. A lot of guys report QC issues, but, haven't seen it personally. Anthony asks, best magnified optic for an AK. What mount? First of all, 545 if it's going on a AK. Second, Trigicon AccuPower is probably a really good option. It's a good variable. I love the BDC for it. 545 ballistics are about the same. Collect dope on your BDC and make sure, because not all BDCs are 100% accurate anyway, so collect dope regardless if you use a BDC. And RS regulate for a mount all day, every day. Moving on. Nick, considering fake ACOGs for my ARs, maybe picking up a real one for one of my guns, but what do you say? No. Fake ACOGs are bullshit. They don't work well ever. That's why they're fake ACOGs, number one. There's going to be somebody in this comment section that says that his fake ACOG is every bit as good as a Trigicon. You're bullshitting me at 110%. There's no fucking way. No, just no. Because the copies are terrible. All of them. And if you're considering getting a legit ACOG and sticking it on a rifle and getting trained, I'm going to be real with you. Sell all but 2 guns. Okay? Stick a legit ACOG on one, leave the irons on the other so that when you get to a point where you can get another ACOG, get it for that. But hold off on getting the optic, because if you just train up real hard on that individual ACOG, most people that train really hard with a particular optic either clone that to another one, or they find a different dedicated purpose for a different gun, and now you have an open host for anything else that you have. Do not do that shit. Sell the rest of those ARs except for 2. Get an ACOG, stick it on the gun that you want, train your ass off with that thing, and then figure out what you want to do afterwards. I'm so serious. This is just better. It's just cheaper in the long run, and you'll be overall more knowledgeable and skilled. So please follow that advice. John, best way to make a steak. 2 things: wet marinade and charcoal grill. Pretty much anything other than that is kind of like subpar. I'm trying to make shit type work. This is my opinion. And my wet marinade for this kind of thing is you chop a bunch of green onions, make sure that you have a bunch of diced garlic in this, 3 cans of beer, go straight into the marinade, bunch of soy sauce and sesame oil go into that as well. Like your pickled jalapenos with the juice, a bunch of that shit goes in there as well, with some lemon pepper, and all those things go over to this one delicious little package. Oh, and by the way, before you stick the steak in there, add some sugar. It brings all that stuff together. It helps coagulate a little bit, so it soaks in easier when the steak goes in. Wash the blood and stuff off the steak. Make sure you pat dry it so that it absorbs this shit easier. Stick it in the marinade, 2 to 3 hours, come back out, grill it, you're good to go. Moving on. Oh, here we go. Offering classes for the 60 plus age group. Look, in every class, and this isn't to sound a certain way, but in every class that we do, we have at least one cool old guy, right? And they love it. They love every single class that they go into. We don't break or kill nobody because that's not our objective, right? We're those type of people where if your body's like, nah, I'm not doing that, we figure out either an alternate or, you can sit out drills. That's okay. More importantly is here's the knowledge that you can go practice with at the house. We're not here to kill you. So yeah, all of our classes are for the 60 plus age group. You'll be fine, 110%. Fucking Darren asks, any rifle patterns that you haven't trained with that you want to? Actually, yes. I wanted to see what the hubbub was about the XM8. Right? Was it really a better G36? Because I hate the G36. I think that thing is a giant piece of shit. It was a huge letdown. But was this indeed better? Never shot with it, never trained with it before, so I'd like to get my hands on a real one and run the wheels off it. Just to see what's what. Nicholas, biggest tip for brand new AK shooters. Yeah. Number one, go with the big three: Russian, Chinese, or Bulgarian. Watch my video on tips for buying your first one, right? And beat it to death. Don't worry about solving any of your issues with technology. Learn how to use those irons correctly. Get a bunch of magazines that work well, okay? East German surplus, Bakelights, K-Var sells the Circle 10 pattern magazines that are fucking expensive, yes, but they work and they'll always work, okay? That's why. That kind of stuff. Get a bunch of those magazines and beat the fuck out of this rifle. That's the number one thing that I can teach AK guys is more than anything else, you need reps on that gun. What else? Aussie or Dio? Aussie because of the bat. How can one... Eric asks... Oh, Andrew asked the Aussie or Dio question. Eric asks, how can one improve when hitting plateaus in training? Find shit you're bad at. You are never done, and you are never 100% up on any skill. If it's one-handed stuff, if it's dumb-handed shooting, if it's revolver shooting, you find something that you're bad at, get into it, attack it, and once you are well-versed in that, there's other shit that you gotta clean up now. Simple as that. And the knowledge and the well-roundedness that you get from all of that helps you approach all guns better. Makes sense? I'm just checking my battery life, guys. Caleb asks, how do you mount a left-handed sling on an AK? Well, as far as left-handed slings on AKs, I'm just going to use this as an example, right? This one's kind of like partially done. You can see that this mounts up like a right-handed person. You have two options. Either you just make sure that it wraps up and doesn't get in all of your shit, or you drill holes into shit like stocks. There are not that many options for it. And up front, where the little ring is supposed to be on the thing, you just kind of make sure that when it hooks up and then wraps up around onto your side. Sorry, you're left-handed dealing with right-handed stuff. You're just going to have to deal with it, dude. Welcome to Southpaw land. It sucks in a lot of ways. Oh, by the way, for people that are wondering, I'm in Josh's fucking basement because the acoustics are great. So there's that. Moving on. Eric, dry fire tips for those who can't get to the range often. I'll do a video on this. Remind me if too long goes without me doing a video on that. Good to go AK mags. Already mentioned that. Aaron. Adam Anderson, training drills that can be done at home and a whole bunch of other stuff. And somebody put a comment under this that said, at this point, it's best to just take a class. And I agree with that, because the point of the class itself is to give you reps on a whole bunch of stuff, get you really exposed to all kinds of things, and then you go home with all of your notes and you practice all that shit. And we do plenty of dry fire tips and that kind of stuff for guys to do at home. Mike asks, since you drive a Prius like a hipster, is your carry gun a CZ? No, it's still a Glock, but I want a P10C. And for guys that hate on the Prius, man, I travel all over the place. I got to be able to be financially sound and get to where I'm getting. Okay? Also, it's actually pretty good police camouflage, to be honest with you. And if I'm driving to places like Maine and you got to go through New York and that kind of shit, it's not happening. You ain't getting pulled over, son. Just don't drive like an idiot. And, dude, it's just cheap. It's the gayest looking car ever, but you can't argue how cheap that damn thing is on gas. Kurt asks, anything new with Magpul upgrading their AK mags? Fuck no, those mags are still built like trash. Carl, How do I save money on car insurance by switching to Geico? Shut the fuck up, Carl. There's that meme. Russell asks, is there a NATO equivalent to the AK? Yes, it's the AR. Since it's been introduced. It's very accurate. It's very accurate. It's very reliable. It's very simple. And the support behind it is immense. Yeah, the NATO equivalent to an AK is an AR all day. Devin, best dick pic angle. Imagine you're sitting in your car, you got a seat, you got a freaking steering wheel. Below that steering wheel, makes you look more impressive. And I'm Asian, so that's kind of required. Michael, what aftermarket mods, if any, do you recommend for the Glock? Okay, replace the sights with some shit that works if you want grip stippling, and then break something. The stock triggers in them are just fine. It's you that needs to work. Kurt asks, and after you break something, now you have enough knowledge to where you can start fumble fucking with that kind of stuff. Alright, still moving. Kurt, thoughts on the Bren 2? No experience. David, what non-3-dot sights do you recommend? There's a big long question, but I have to shorten it. Heine straight 8s. Mariglow runs some really good stuff. If you're working on an eye dominance type issue, or if you're trying to work on shooting with both eyes open, excess big dot sights actually really do help. And if you use the sights correctly, you can hit shit far away with it fast. A lot of people really trash them, but that's one thing that I really, really do, say they work just fine. Some of you like target type sights more, and to be honest, I do too. But working on shifting my eye dominance from my left to right hand side is an order of magnitude more difficult. And yes, you absolutely can. Guys that say that you can't, you're full of crap. But it helps just because of the larger object. So it's working out well so far. And Luke asks, good options for a first time suppressor. Silencer Co. and Surefire, because they have really good muzzle devices that go with them. Like just as a for instance, the Surefire War Comp hooks up with its friggin' suppressors, and they work great. And if you're a first-time suppressor guy and you want to stick this on a rifle or that kind of thing, go for the larger caliber, right? Because there are guys that are just kind of like, I want this for a 5.56 rifle. I also want to suppress my fucking AK or SCAR or whatever. Get a 30 caliber can to start, so that way you can do both. And yes, it's heavier and a little bit longer and all that stuff, but you'll be able to do it for both. So, you'll suck a little bit less, monetarily speaking, and weighting and all that stuff if you just start with a 30 caliber can. And if you go with one of those two, I think you're fine all the way out. So, that's it. That is the Q&A. And I know that was long as shit, but I was obligated to answer all of those damn questions because I said I would. So, that's all I got, guys. Yeah, man, it's been a long time since I've done one of these last, and you know what? I'm glad that I got the chance to go out and answer all of these really good questions that came out. Yeah, there were some fuck about questions, but for the most part, all of them were really, really good. They answer questions that I don't answer often, which is I'm pretty sure why they came about. So that's all I got, guys. If you want to support us via Patreon, if you want to come out to class, certainly come out and do it. If you stuck with us this long, holy shit, you're a warrior. But, for the rest of that, guys, remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.